So we're going to hear from Katie Jagger of Saltwater Seeds and OSA, as well as Chris Smith from the Utopian Seed Project. And I get the immense pleasure of working with Katie and also being her friend. She is the co-owner of Saltwater Seeds, as we mentioned. And in addition to being a field assistant right now with OSA, she also was the farm manager. And fun fact, I interned under Katie for 2 years during the deepest parts of COVID in the beginning. And it was just such a joy every day to go spend some time with her. So um, deeply grateful for that experience. Katie helps with field research and education at OSA. She's been farming since 2004 and working with seeds since 2005, which is crazy to think is over 20 years ago now. In addition to her responsibilities at OSA, she co-owns and manages Saltwater Seeds, a certified organic seed company producing and selling maritime adapted seeds. From 2006 to 2015, she managed a small-scale, no-till, intensive CSA farm in Rhode Island and has worked with seed on the Olympic Peninsula since 2016, where she currently lives and farms in Sequim, Washington. And I know Katie's in transit today with a seed celebrity. So, Katie, are you there? You want to say a little hello before we transfer over to your video?
Hi everybody. I am in transit. I'm seated for the moment, but our celebrity guest, Michaela Colley, might interrupt me so that we can start our trek out to the desert. I pre-recorded, well, whatever, we can get to it. I pre-recorded this because I'm traveling. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks, Katie. We're gonna play your video here. Can everybody see that video? Get a thumbs up. Awesome. All right, here we go.
Hi, I'm Katie Jagger. I'll be traveling today, so I'm going to pre-record this so that I can do a better job. We don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen um, and get this going. I wear two hats. I help with field research for Organic Seed Alliance, and I am a seed grower at Saltwater Seeds. We grow and sell seeds adapted to maritime climates, and we're currently growing on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington. Um, I'm hoping that my work with OSA can start focusing more on working with farmers on selection and breeding work. And to that end, I put together this slideshow about my history with that work and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. This all started in 2005 at Scratch Farm. Scratch Farm was started by Mary Boulon. And in 2005, I was working at Manic Organic in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, while Mary was starting Scratch Farm. And then 2006, we joined forces um, and worked there together. 2007, Mary went off to study agronomy, and Ocean became my business partner. And then later on down the line, Ben Torpy became my business partner. And we learned a lot along the way. That first year in 2006, Mary had um, found out about a seed conference in Western Massachusetts hosted by the folks from Restoring Our Seed. And I got to see Dr. Raoul Robinson speak about his work breeding for horizontal resistance, which I found to be very inspiring. And we returned to the farm and we saved as many seeds as we could. Now, when we were thinking about what to save seed from, our initial crop planning was heavily influenced by Manic Organic Farm in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, where I had worked, run by Nicole Vitello, seen on the left. She's now working for Equal Exchange, importing bananas. Natural Roots Farm in Western Massachusetts, a friend of mine worked there, and they were generous enough to share their crop plans. And then Tobacco Road Farm was also very influential in my early farming career. So uh, Scratch Farm was a small scale, 150 CSA member, 2-acre farm run by two people, and we saved as many seeds as we possibly could. And I wanted to share some of the things that we learned along the way. That first year when Mary and I were farming, We got some sugar baby watermelon seeds, probably from Fedco, and we planted out 450-foot beds. And the next day it rained 4 inches, which is a lot of rain. It killed most of the plants, and the plants that were remaining struggled. Um, one of the plants did well enough and made one really nice fruit, which we saved seed from and planted out the following year with a couple other varieties of watermelon. And then within a year after that, we were just harvesting tons and tons of watermelons, and we were able to harvest plenty of watermelon every year ever since. Um, One less successful project were parsnips. That was one of the first things we saved seed from. Each year, we would either leave the parsnips in the ground and save seed from them, or dig them up, not wash them. I was taught that to store roots well, you want to not wash them, and then we would replant them. Over the years, we found that the roots started having more and more rest, and I think that if we had washed the roots, selected them against rest, and then replanted them, we probably could have avoided this. Tomatoes, our strategy with tomatoes was at the very beginning of the season, we would make sure to have some yellow, green, and red flagging tape that was kept with the tomatoes. And 3 or 4 weeks during harvest season, during each harvest, we would walk through with the flagging tape while we were harvesting and flag the earliest plants with yellow flagging tape, any plants with heavy fruit set and really nice looking fruit with red flagging tape, and then any plants that had a really beautiful, healthy foliage with green flagging tape. And then at the end of the season, we would save seed off of the plants that had some or a lot of flags on them. We also saved seed from some hybrid tomatoes with some success. And every once in a while, we would see a chance outcross between tomato varieties, which we would save seed from. Another good lesson learned was with cucumbers. Um, we had noticed that there was a lot of disease on our cucumbers in Rhode Island, and so we set out to select against select for disease resistance. So we would plant out 350-foot beds of cucumbers. Um, when they first started setting fruit, we would pull out any plants that had not yet set any fruit, just to make sure we weren't inadvertently selecting for lateness. Then we would take note of any plant that had two fruits that were ready at the same time, and we would harvest one fruit and leave the other one to save seed from. And then as the season went on, we'd start seeing a little bit of disease. And as we started seeing disease, we would pull out plants that were diseased. At the end of the season, we would have ripe fruit from all of the plants that had matured more than one fruit at a time, were disease resistant and early, and we would save seed from them. But we weren't tasting them. And we did notice after about 5 or 6 years of this selection that some of the fruits started tasting unacceptably bitter. So we started selecting them for flavor. And the way we would do this was by cutting the end off of a fruit, tasting it, but leaving the fruit on the plant. That way we would know that we had already tasted fruit off of that plant and that we could leave it. If it tasted bad, we just would pull it out. But since all of the plants don't have fruit at the same time, it was difficult to taste all of the plants all at once. Um, I've also heard that you can taste the cotyledon of the plant in order to see if that plant will be bitter. But I haven't actually done this, so I don't know for sure. Probably our most successful project was the sweet pepper mix. Our first year growing peppers, we found that the majority of the peppers rotted before they ripened fully. Um, we started with 3 varieties of peppers, and I don't know what they were. I regret that I didn't keep track of that. Um, but one of them was, and I don't know where we got them. I don't know what they were, and I don't know where we got them. We could have bought them from a seed company. We could have got them at a seed swap. I don't know. but one of them was yellow, one of them was red, and one of them was chocolate colored. And we would plant one
Here we go.
of them was chocolate colored, and we would plant one bed of each color. The first year we hardly got any ripe peppers, but we saved seed from the ones that did ripen. And then the following year we planted out once again a bed of each color of peppers, and we got more peppers. And within 3 years, we were harvesting crates and crates of beautiful ripe peppers. Um, and this one, a lot of these varieties were lost to me when I moved to the West Coast. I moved to a place with a cold, mild summer where it's very difficult to grow watermelons and peppers and tomatoes. But Heron Breen had visited Scratch Farm probably in 2017, right when I had left, and got seed of these varieties from Ben, who continued running the farm after I had left. Um, Heron and Donna continued to make selections on this pepper for flavor, and adapted it even further north because they're farming in Maine. Um, and they did enough work that it got the attention of Fedco, and Fedco is offering it for sale this year. Heron also was able to pass back to me this pepper and the watermelon and one of the tomatoes this past winter in 2025 at the Seed Growers Conference. And I was able to grow out this pepper in Squim this year, and they were the nicest peppers I've ever grown outside in Western Washington. I was very impressed and thrilled that this is going to be available to more people. Um, so I wanted to just talk a little bit about how every time we save seed, the plants that we are working with change in some way or another. It's inevitable. And it seems like, from my experience, that plants will adapt within about 3 years to a new environment. But if they aren't being maintained, more deleterious traits can develop after time over time, like with the cucumbers. And here are some of the things that I've run into that I don't have any solutions to, and I'm curious to talk to others about and to problem solve about. And I'd love it if you could think about what some of those questions are for you, so that you can share with the group, or if you have strategies for how I might be able to work on some of these issues. So I've been saving seed from sugar snap peas for probably 15, 20 years maybe. And I haven't done any selection. They're self-pollinating. They shouldn't need a whole lot of selection. But I worry that they're starting to get stringy. What can I do about that? Also, we have a squash population. We've been selecting for sweet flavor, but we haven't been selecting for productivity at all. And I worry that we're starting to have squash that don't produce very many fruit, but they're very sweet. What can I do about that? The cucumbers, you've heard a lot about the cucumber problems. Also, the market more seem to have tougher and tougher skin. What can we do about that? And then, in thinking about some of these diverse populations where there are a lot of colors, like the peppers and the Fantasia carrot, what can we do to make sure that there's a good balance of colors within the population? And how do we account for some of the colors doing better than others? Just a few questions that I have, and I hope that it can spark some conversation. Thank you. And
Thanks, Katie. Are you there? Do you want to add any words to your video?
Hi, I'm here. Um, I don't know. I mean, that's most of what I have to say.
Well,
I'm excited to hear about Chris's work.
great. Yeah, let's segue. Chris, I see you here. I know you're on the same time zone as me, so we're burning the midnight oil over here. But do you want to unmute and share a little bit about the Utopian Seed Project and the open pollination work that you all are doing?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us. Um, if I get screaming children in the background, then I apologize in advance. It's kind of bedtime routine that I'm skipping out on. Um, so so yeah, a big topic to cram into short amount of time, and I thought I'd skip the slides and just kind of talk a little bit. And I kind of had the feeling that this would be like a safe, nerdy space. So I wanted to try and speak out loud some things that I maybe haven't spoken out loud before, and see what kind of rabbit holes I end up in. And hopefully I'm not too confusing with what I'm going to try and say. And I also had seen Katie's video and thought that there were some fantastic examples in there of regional adaptation and seed selection and that kind of work. So what I really wanted to do was talk a little bit about open pollinated maintenance and what even that means. Because in my mind, when we grow a seed and it becomes a plant and then we save seeds, then there's kind of two things happening. The plant is adapting on its own terms. And then as people, we're coming into that process and making selections on our terms. And so there's two dueling things happening. And so if open pollination maintenance is this kind of like exercise in maintaining a variety as is over time, then I think that's like an entirely flawed concept, because even if as humans we can come to the table with that agenda, the plant has its like totally own agenda. And even though like recent plant breeding is focused on genetics and Mendelian genetics specifically, there's like so much more going on. And the more I read and understand about plants, the more amazed I am and the more complex it seems. And the more our desire to control seems foolhardy. We know there's genetics. We understand the genetics fairly well. There's the epigenetics where the plants change their gene expression in response to the environment. There's the whole world of mutations, and that could be human-induced mutations, but then the plants are always mutating, and some of them have visible changes, and that affects how the plants express and do their thing over time. The whole world of like both soil microbiology and then the plants absorbing microbes and then training those microbes to do services for the plants, which are then able to be passed on to the next generation through the seed microbiome, is just like mind blowing. And I don't understand any of it, but I know that this just like the plants are brilliant in this. And then when we get into the edgier subjects of plant intelligence and plant agency, and plant communication, then there's just things that are going on that I think are just beyond our understanding. And it's somewhat naive and or arrogant for us to come in and say, we can control this process through genetic selection. Like there's just more going on than that. So how that pertains to like open pollinated maintenance, I don't quite know, but I do like this concept that we find in like evolutionary biology. They call it the Red Queen hypothesis that you might have come across. Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, I've got the quote here. The Red Queen said, "Now here you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place." And it's basically speaking to the idea that in evolutionary biology, the plants have to be constantly evolving and constantly changing and constantly adapting just to keep pace with itself, just to not fall behind. And even though what's happening on our farms and in our gardens through seed saving and selection and adaptation it's not evolution, but it's kind of like this microcosm of evolution that we have some degree of control over. And so the same theories kind of apply in terms of just this idea of constant change. And so we're left in this weird space where to maintain something that is constantly changing means that we have to constantly change it back. And so variety maintenance isn't about keeping something the same. It's about constantly changing it to be something that it was, because it's changing anyway. So if that's the case, then one of the quotes that jumped into my head a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago, Edmund Frost said to me that to not make a selection on your farm or on your crop is still a form of selection. And I think he was speaking to this idea of, even if you don't go in there and make a decision, decisions are still being made, and they're being made by the plants, and the plants are going to go in their own direction. So you kind of have to have this like active hand in the selection process to have that varietal maintenance over time. And so when I think about all this in like real term context on the farm, then we can imagine a space where we have like a perfect environmental conditions that are consistent from year to year, a perfect uniform farm landscape. And in that environment, I imagine open pollinated varietal maintenance makes a lot of sense. Like we can achieve this like this best variety that we maintain over time, and it continually to performs in this fixed environment. But I think most of us on the call are operating in kind of like low input, low environmental modification environments where we deal with a huge amount of variables. And then we throw in climate change and we have even more variables. And we're just not dealing with any level of predictability in the farm. And so to try and maintain predictability in the seed, which doesn't even want the predictability because it's changing itself anyway in an environment that is not predictable, in my mind, doesn't make any sense. There's another quote that I really like that has nothing to do with seeds, but I can never get it out of my head when I think about this stuff. It's from a book. I think it's like a self-help guide called This Is Me Letting You Go, but it reads, to love someone long term is to attend 1,000 funerals of the people they used to be. And I think about that seed, like with seeds all the time, because the seeds, like certainly with annual crops, they live and they grow and they die within a year, and so every year is a funeral for that seed and a chance for rebirth. And so if we let go of this idea of control and consistency over time and accept that they're going to change, then we have this ability to redefine our relationship with the seed in a way that really speaks to like long-term love of the seed and love of the crops. And I think that's a lot of us are drawn to this work because of that relationship we develop with seeds. And I don't think we're drawn to it because we want to control and maintain that variety as it is over time. I think it's because we love the work and that they continue to reinvent themselves. And so that quote of like just accepting that they're going to change and that to love them is to accept that change is a big part of this work. So I do want to kind of note that this isn't new. Like I think this isn't the way that we've bred plants over the last 100 years or so, but I think this is the way that people used to be in relationship with plants. Author Wesley Green wrote a book about kind of colonial gardening time, and he talks about the way we save seeds now, and he says we're trying to preserve a moment in time to prevent change in our garden plants, while colonial gardeners were trying to improve their crops and change them rapidly. So that there's these like two very distinct mindsets where it's like this is something that we have to keep as is, and or we change our relationship and we change it over time. And so just to kind of like bring some of these out there thoughts to like real work that we're doing with the Utopian Seed Project, we do a lot of these community seed maintenance projects where we develop very diverse, genetically diverse varieties and push them out into the community. Right now, we're running a grant where we've sent one of 5 different crop types out to, like, we've got more than 150 farmers across the Southeast that have signed up to receive a highly diverse mix of either collards, okra, beans, southern peas, or squash, a winter squash. And we're asking them to grow those really diverse varieties and effectively just do whatever they want with them, grow them, experience them, harvest them, eat them, sell them at markets. But we are asking them to save seeds, and we're asking them to save seeds from the plants that they, actually, we're just asking them to save seeds, and they can save from whatever they want. And it's been a really interesting dialogue that some people get it right away, and they walk the rows, and they're like, "Oh, I love this one because this okra has beautiful red blushing," or this bean was just like laden with pods. But we have a lot of other farmers that are like locked into this idea of fixed varieties, and I get emails from them saying, always asking me like, "What? I don't understand the project. What am I selecting for? What do you want me to do?" And so there's an element of this where I think like we've got to accept that plants can have agency, but also farmers, like the most intelligent, brilliant people I know, that they also need like the agency to be able to make their own on-farm decisions. And I think that speaks to what some of Katie was talking about in terms of, you know, what are your specific on-farm needs and how can we make selections over time to meet those needs? And we see rapid adaptation to our own conditions. So it's an exciting project to work with all these farmers in the southeast, and we're going about it in a slightly different way in terms of allowing them to make their own selections from a diverse base to whatever they want. And I'm going to wrap this up just with one final thought. Um, I've kind of got this half-formed idea of like what if instead of maintaining a variety as a singular thing or lots of varieties, what if we focus our energy on maintaining the chaos? And in a community, we could maintain like the most crazy diverse mix of things and put all our energy into like absolute genetic insanity. And then farmers could receive a little bundle of that insanity and do whatever they want with it. And we see these kind of like linear threads coming out from the bundle of chaos in the middle. And they could maintain diversity. They could make selections. They could have like hyper uniformity. They can do whatever they want with it. But you got all these different stories coming out from the chaos. And then if you could have a feedback loop where as those farmers developed the varieties came back into the chaos and then refed back out into the community. And you just have this like very chaotic jumble of like, yeah, just a mess. But I think a beautiful mess, and I think a highly climate resilient mess, and I think a lot of opportunity from that diversity for both the farmer and the seeds to express themselves in way more interesting ways than a centralized plant breeding system. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Chris. That was absolutely incredible. We have time for a little bit of Q&A. If anybody wants to jump in here, feel free to use the raise hand function. I see some hearts over on Dan's square. Got a lot of love in the chat. Anybody have a question for Chris or for Katie? And Chris, I apologize. I didn't even read your intro. I just glossed right over that part. So if there's anything you want to share about yourself or about Utopian and your new book that's coming up, which is awesome. Any questions for Chris or Katie?
Okay, if no one else is going to say something, one thing that I think about as far as like the chaos goes is, and especially in thinking about sharing something with farmers, is what is good enough? Like, I don't want to share something with farmers that they're going to grow and they're going to be like, oh God, that carrot tastes horrible or is hairy or lumpy. I cannot sell that. um, and like, and I guess with the chaos, how do we make sure that it's good enough to share with the farmers? Like, is that just something that, you know, whoever it is that's providing the seed decides, or yeah, I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out.
I can answer that actually. I think there's different levels of chaos for one, and I do think farmer utility is really important. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Um, what one example would be we created a really diverse mix of collards that was like just out of the gate fantastic. It was like the most tenderest college you've ever imagined. They were very productive. There was like amazing diversity. It was beautiful. Farmers just loved them from the get-go, and that's been just a great project. On the back of that, I was like, oh, I've created this big collard mix. I've got to do it with okra because I really love okra. And I went and I thought naively, I was like, we had like 21 diverse heirloom parents to the collards, and I was like, so I've got to do more for the okra. And I had like 100 varieties of okra, and I had some related species. It was just like insane okra, and they all cross pollinated. And I was like, this is the best, most diverse mix ever, and it probably is. but some of the wild species that I didn't think would crossed in at a fairly high rate, and they were like insanely spiny, and you could kill people with this okra, and it was just this whole um, like beautifully diverse, but also completely impractical on any farm level. Like, there was some like 20 feet tall okra and 2 feet tall okra, and none of it really made sense in terms of like having any level of utility. And so that was a big check for me in terms of balancing, agronomic traits that are required in the field with diversity that gives us this climate resilience that I really believe we need. And there is a sweet spot, and I think if you're interested in this, then looking into resilience theory outside of like climate resilience has become a buzzword, but resilience theory is a has a long history of research, and they do a lot of there's a lot of interesting analysis out there that basically shows a bell curve where you can balance diversity with efficiency and find this like optimum area of growth. And I think we're looking for diverse mixes that operate in that optimum growth level. That doesn't, I would still say there's space for somebody to have like extreme chaos, but they probably wouldn't go from extreme chaos straight to farmer. You'd probably go from extreme chaos within a community, probably a nonprofit that's got nothing to lose, and then sending out like subgroups of more managed chaos. So that might be all the collards together, but then subtypes of agronomically useful cabbage collards, heading collards, blue collards that then go out to farmers to make further selections that become varieties that then feed back into the chaos. At least that's the way I see it in my brain. But the point is, you can have too much chaos, I guess, is my summary.